This is episode 136 of Teacher Approved. You're listening to Teacher Approved, the podcast helping educators elevate what matters and simplify the rest. I'm Heidi.
And I'm Emily. We're the creators behind Second Story Window, where we give research-based and teacher-approved strategies that make teaching less stressful and more effective. You can check out the show notes and resources from each episode at secondstorywindow.net.
We're so glad you're tuning in today. Let's get to the show.
Hey there, thanks for joining us today. In today's episode, we have 4 helpful suggestions for making a smooth grade level change and sharing a teacher-approved tip for adapting your favorite parts of teaching for any grade.
We start our episodes with a morning message, just like we used to do at morning meeting in our classrooms. This week's morning message is, if your most frequently used teacher phrase was your new tattoo, what would it say? These responses are so good. But Emily, what tattoo would you be getting?
Mine would probably be on your pockets. Yeah, I feel like I said that one a lot.
Yeah, that all comes rushing back. Just hearing that.
What about you, Heidi?
I think it would be, I'll worry about him, you worry about you.
A classic. That'd be handy to have on a tattoo. You could just point to it. We loved the responses from our teacher-approved community. Amy's tattoo would say, sit down.
And she was not alone on that one.
Christine's would say, focus. She typed it in all caps, so I guess her tattoo would all be in caps too. Andrea's got a question I asked all the time. What are you doing? What are you supposed to be doing?
A classic.
Yeah, it's a long one, though. Susan's is make a better choice. That would be a good tattoo.
Yeah, it actually would be handy.
And we had lots of nice, encouraging teachers whose tattoos would say things like, I love you, or do your best. But I'd be more likely to get a tattoo like Sherry's, who says, what we're not going to do is. Plus, these ones are much more fun than the nice ones, let's be honest. And I think we'd all end up with a tattoo like Angela's that is just the name of one particular kid.
Oh, yeah. But that's not a name you want to remember.
Yeah. Or like Jen's, which would be a face with the teacher look in the eyes and one eyebrow raised. You know what I'm talking about now, right? I'm like trying to do it right now through the airwaves to you.
I think everyone is probably doing that. Probably driving their cars, getting weird looks.
Yep, that teacher look never fails. We'd love to hear your most used teacher phrase over in our Teacher Approved Facebook group.
A big part of the end of the school year routine is finding out what grade you're teaching next year.
Teachers often want to change grade levels because they want an opportunity to grow.
Or maybe they're looking to get away from a difficult grade level team. Can't blame anyone for that.
But I think in a lot of cases, teachers get moved whether they want to or not, and they may be going unwillingly.
People outside of education probably have no clue that teachers often get no say, no warning, and maybe even no input on what grade they teach.
Ugh, it's so crazy. But hopefully you're at a school where the administrator respects teachers' voices and takes their preferences into account when possible.
But we have all heard the horror stories of teachers finding out last minute that they're moving down 4 grade levels or getting moved after the school year has even already started.
Nightmare. It can be really tough out there on these school streets. And whether you are moving by choice or by force, starting in a new grade level comes with some unique challenges.
So today we have 4 tips to take any grade level change from stressful to successful. So start us off with our first tip, Emily.
Our first tip is to know where you're going. Obviously, you know you're going to a new grade level, but it's vital to know what you're in for when you get there.
I have found that a lot of advice for switching grade levels says to start by diving into the curriculum, but I'm going to disagree with that. I think the best place to start is by learning the general characteristics of the kids in the grade where you'll be teaching. And here's why. If I'm going from teaching first grade to 4th grade and I start digging into standards and my teacher manuals, I've still got my first grade lenses on. So I'm looking at this new content through the eyes of someone used to teaching 6-year-olds, not 10-year-olds. And that can make things overwhelming, and it limits my ability to identify which lessons will be engaging and which might need a makeover. So instead of opening that math book, I think a better bet is to get to know fourth graders first.
I love that tip. And if there's any way to spend some time in the new grade you'll be switching to, beg your principal to make it happen. That way you can get a sense of what kids at that age are capable of doing.
And one thing to consider if you're doing this over the summer is you might want to shadow classes that are kids at the end of the grade level before the grade you'll be teaching. So if you're going to be teaching fourth grade, you might want to follow around some end of year third graders, obviously with administrative.
Yeah, don't just show up and start following them around, guys. That's not what we're saying. Don't sue us.
Ask first, and then follow maybe a third grade class around. You can see what the kids that will be coming into fourth grade are ready to handle.
Yeah, then you're seeing them like as they're going to be coming to you in just a few months. And it's especially important if you're doing a big grade jump. Going from second to first or second to third isn't nearly the adjustment as going from, say, second to fifth.
I did that jump in reverse. I went from fifth to second during my teaching practicum. And then I also went from absolutely crushing it as a fifth grade new little teacher to wanting to drop out of the education program because nobody prepared me for how different those ages are. And then the joke is on me that I then spent 12 years teaching second grade. But I only took my first second grade job because the person setting up the interview said it was for fourth grade. I knew I could do fourth grade. And I only found out it was for second after I had accepted the job. But I guess it all worked out.
Yeah, it did work out. And now like second grade's the best. But well, we want to help you avoid that culture shock. So do what you can to get to know what's in store for you. If you can't visit in person, Responsive Classroom, one of our favorite resources, has several articles about knowing what to expect at each grade level. They talk about common characteristics of kids at that age and how that impacts your teaching.
They also have books for each grade level if you really want to go into more detail. And we will link to each of the grade level articles and then the books in the show notes.
And then once you know your kids, it's time to get to know your curriculum. Deep dive the core standards, pull out the teacher manuals, and get familiar with the lessons. If your new team has a scope and sequence or a pacing guide, fingers crossed, take a good look at those resources. If not, start looking online for a version you can use as a reference for your own pacing guide.
You also might want to search for common misconceptions for your new grade level. If you teach third grade where students are comparing fractions, it's useful to know that students frequently think 1/4 is larger than 1/2 because 4 is larger than 2.
This is important for teachers as well. Sometimes teachers have misconceptions that they pass on to their students. The website Achieve the Core has a whole series on the most misunderstood math standards in each grade level. We'll link to that in the show notes so you can check it out too.
Another way to manage your new content is to set up some Pinterest boards. You know, we love Pinterest. Consider a main board for each subject you teach. So you might have a third grade math board and a third grade science board and all of that.
Then you can make smaller sections inside those boards for each unit. Your writing board might have a section for Unit 1, generating ideas, Unit 2, personal narrative, and so on.
It's so much easier to start organized than it is to get organized later. So setting up the system you want now will be a huge help going forward.
Besides figuring out your new curriculum, you also need to figure out your new management plan. The good news is that your foundations don't have to change.
Right. The hallmark of a good management plan is your philosophy, and that carries over regardless of what age you're teaching. So that means you just have to adapt particulars. For example, sixth graders probably are not going to be real jazzed to put a magic marshmallow in their mouths before they walk in the hall like your first graders did. But your general approach to student management really doesn't have to change.
And once you know what to expect in your new grade level, you're ready for tip number 2, which is manage your resources.
Hopefully, you have some time to thoughtfully pack up your stuff before you need to be out of your room. And then you can take some time to inventory which materials will work for your new grade level and which ones you want to leave behind.
Normally, we'd probably advocate for clearing out clutter. But if you think there's a chance that you want to switch back to your current grade level, you probably do want to hold on to things.
Just be sure that what you're holding on to is worth reusing in a few years. I had this whole debate when I was going from second to preschool. It's tempting to store everything just in case you need it. But in reality, if you are coming back to this grade level in a few years, the stuff you have now might not be something you want to reuse. So only store it if you are certain that you can't teach without it.
Once you've decided what you're keeping, be ruthless about clearing out the rest. As teachers, we've adapted a scarcity model and we can see potential in every bit of junk. But be realistic about holding on to stuff just in case when it's already so hard to organize and store the stuff you actually need.
And if the former teacher in your classroom left behind a ton of stuff, toss as much as you can, just as long as it's not anything that the school actually owns.
Yeah, don't toss anything that the school paid for. But the rest can likely go. And I should have done this because I moved into a classroom where the teacher had moved to 6th grade and she was nearing retirement and she left me tons of stuff from a lot of years in 2nd grade. And I just wasn't sure what I would need. And so I kept it all and it used up so much of my cupboard space. So you don't have to keep it just because it was left for you.
Right. She probably thought, oh, I'm helping this new teacher out. But I'm just going to guess that it was very unlikely that your teaching style matched that teacher's teaching style. So you just end up with a bunch of junk.
Yep.
Do what you can to clear out those abandoned materials, or you are basically providing free storage for another teacher's stuff. Nobody's got the room for that.
For anything you do keep, get to know exactly when and how to use it. There's no sense in storing that class set of Cuisenaire rods if you don't know which math lessons they go with.
And if you need some Cuisenaire rods or any other materials, but your new classroom doesn't have them, do what you can to round them up this summer.
First, you will want to talk to your principal. Maybe there are materials in the school somewhere that you can use.
Or hopefully the principal has some money so you can get exactly what you need. Definitely start with the person who controls the spending and then branch out from there. You can try local buy-sell trade groups or maybe a donors choose campaign so that you can get exactly what you need.
And if you're not sure what supplies are most useful in your new grade level, ask the teachers who have taught that grade for a while. And that is our 3rd tip for switching grades. Find your people.
Reach out to the experts around you. Most teachers are eager to help a new teacher find their footing. Hopefully, you get a chance to meet your new team before school starts. If no summer meetings are scheduled, you can try starting with an email.
It would be nice if the established teachers on the team reached out to the newbie first, but it doesn't always work out that way, so don't be afraid to start the introductions yourself.
And like we mentioned earlier, if there's any way to observe your new grade, try to make that happen.
That's especially helpful if you're switching schools. Getting a sense of how the lunchroom works and how recess works will make the start of the year so much easier.
And don't forget the power of virtual support. Look for teachers to follow on Instagram or TikTok who are in your new grade. And there are plenty of grade-specific Facebook groups where you can go for advice and support.
Also consider your favorite teacher sellers. If you already know you trust a seller's resources, see what they might have for your new grade level.
And this can be especially helpful if they have year-long bundles of resources. That is such an easy way to simplify your planning and prep your first year.
And just a little plug for the Teacher Approved Facebook group. We've got teachers from all grades who are great to give support and guidance.
Not to mention, we sell several year-long bundles of resources. If you want top-of-the-line morning work already planned for you, we've got 1st through 4th grade done, and here's a little surprise we haven't announced anywhere. 5th grade is on its way.
Yes, Heidi has been hard at work.
All the fractions.
So think of all the new things you get to buy for your new grade level. That will be fun.
Hey there, teacher friend. Do you have a question or concern that could use a teacher-approved solution?
We'd love to help you out by answering your question here on the podcast. You can submit your questions to hello@secondstorywindow.net and put podcast question in your subject line. We can't wait to hear what's on your mind.
Which brings us to our final tip for switching grade levels, and that is to feel your feelings. Maybe you're feeling excited for a brand new start as a teacher. Maybe you're feeling nervous or resentful.
Or maybe you're feeling all of that at once. This is likely to be a roller coaster of highs and lows, and that's normal. This is a big transition.
Do what you can to get prepared for the new year, but also make it a priority to enjoy your summer.
If you want some support in balancing those two conflicting goals, make sure to check out our free end-of-year roadmap where we help you make a plan for supporting back-to-school readiness without sacrificing your summer recovery.
There's a link to the roadmap in the show notes, and there are also pages in the roadmap to help you identify which of your many tasks is most worthy of your time and energy. When you've got a whole new grade level to prepare for, it's easy to feel like everything is important, but you simply just cannot do it all.
Instead of trying to be an expert right away, try choosing one part of the curriculum to focus on. Maybe this year you put your biggest efforts into reading or science, and then you rely on your boxed curriculum or TPT resources to cover the rest.
Definitely use the materials you've been given as you're starting out. I wish someone had told me that as a new teacher. You can personalize your lessons as you get more comfortable. And it's okay if it takes all year before you start feeling comfortable with your new grade.
Yeah, you likely will feel unsettled for a while. All you can do is take things one day at a time.
Or maybe even one lesson at a time. Have realistic expectations for how this change will go, but also trust your strengths. You were a good teacher before, and you are still a good teacher in this new grade.
If a grade level switch is in your future, go easy on yourself. You will figure it out. And don't forget these 4 tips to help you survive along the way. Know what's ahead, manage your resources, find your people, and feel your feelings.
If you have done a grade level switch before, we would love to hear all of your tips about how you manage the change. Come join the conversation in our Teacher Approved Facebook group.
Now let's talk about this week's Teacher Approved tip. Each week we leave you with a small actionable tip that you can apply in your classroom today. This week's Teacher Approved tip is to keep doing what you love. I like the sound of that. Fill us in, Heidi.
If there are activities or lessons that you love doing with your current grade level, don't feel like you have to give them up just because you're switching grades. With some creativity, you can adapt what you're doing now to make them work for your new students. So if you are moving down to younger kids, you might need to include more support. So for example, if your favorite thing in 3rd grade was doing readers theater performances every spring, you can still do that with 1st graders. Firsties will just need more support than your 3rd graders did. So maybe instead of having small groups of kids perform, you could do a whole class readers theater. Or you could do one small group performance a week instead of everybody performing at once, so you can give each group the support it needs. Now, if you are moving up grade levels, do the opposite. Look for ways to adapt your favorite activities that give kids more flexibility and challenge. One of my favorite 2nd grade activities was our Gremlin math game activity. I'm not sure what to call it. As a class, we made a huge poster of math facts, and then one night, the sneaky gremlin came in and painted over some of the numbers. The kids then had the challenge of figuring out which numbers were hidden. So if we had the strip of paper that said 5 plus 8 equals 13, and maybe the gremlin painted over the 8, so the kids would have to figure out 5 plus splotch equals 13. They'd have to figure out what the splotch was. So if I were moving down to 1st, I could adapt that by narrowing the range of numbers up to 10. If I were moving up to 3rd or 4th, I could do this with multiplication or division facts. Or if I wanted more of a challenge for older kids, I could have them write equations with multiple operations. And then they'd have to figure out how 3 times 5 plus giant paint splotch equals 36.
And this is also a situation where Pinterest can be useful. Try searching for your favorite activity with your new grade level, like STEM challenges for 2nd graders. That can help you find lots of resources. Just because you're teaching a new grade doesn't mean you have to give up what you love teaching.
To wrap up the show, we are sharing what we're giving extra credit to this week. Emily, what gets your extra credit?
I am giving extra credit to the documentary Butterfly in the Sky on Netflix. It was on Netflix, right?
Yes, it was on
Yes,
Netflix.
it's on Netflix. So, and this is the story of Reading Rainbow. Now, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, like we did, you did not even need us to tell you that because you already knew. And it just talks about the journey of the show through interviews with LeVar Burton and the staff members and the creators. And then there's really lovely clips from episodes all throughout the story. It was just really interesting to hear how, like, sort of the rise and then plateau and eventually cancellation of
Reading Rainbow. And it made me just actually feel really grateful to have grown up with a show like that. Like, we are so lucky that we had those kind of shows between Mr. Rogers and Reading Rainbow. Like, we were set up for some really spectacular success having those kind of shows available to us for free on TV. It's just such a lovely show, and I loved revisiting it on this documentary. And you watched it too, Heidi, didn't you?
Yeah, I just finished it yesterday. They had some interviews with the kids that had done some of the book reviews. And I loved getting to hear them talk about their experience coming and filming and how it changed their trajectory going forward, having this experience. It was beautiful. It was everything you'd want a Reading Rainbow documentary to be.
Yes.
Except I wanted them to come back at the end and be like, and now we're launching for a whole new series.
I know. Yes. Ugh. I loved hearing the adults reminiscing about being the kids, introducing the books, and what was fun about it, what was tricky about it. What were you saying, Heidi, about the
one kid that really had to struggle to remember Wilfred Gordon McDonald Partridge, which is a mouthful.
Yes, it is. And I know there was another one who wanted to come across in a different way. So he came and he was talking really emphatically, and it was just so cute. I loved it. So if you grew up on Reading Rainbow, and maybe even if you didn't, check out Butterfly in the Sky on Netflix.
So good.
What are you giving extra credit to, Heidi?
Well, my extra credit is going to another of our favorites. It is going to the 2002 classic, The Importance of Being Earnest, which I realize is a lot older than 2002, but I'm specifically talking about the movie from 2002.
Oh, I love it so much.
Okay, so random backstory. I recently helped with a field trip to a pioneer village, and there was this quartet of singers that were kind of following us around with their guitar because there just weren't that many people in the park that day. And let me tell you, regardless of how talented the singers are, there's a limit to the number of times you want to hear "She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain." That limit is 1. But anyway, I was laughing because it was just totally reminding me of a scene from The Importance of Being Earnest. So Colin Firth and Rupert Everett are trying to win over the ladies via serenade, but the ladies keep walking away. So the men are singing and playing while they're following these women around, except Rupert Everett is playing the piano. So these poor servants are having to carry this piano around, and he's just continuing to sing and play completely unfazed by these maids and butler, trying to haul this piano around. Anyway, it's very silly. It's very funny. And if you want something light to laugh at, totally check this out. Plus, Judi Dench as Lady Bracknell is just chef's kiss perfection. She's so good.
So good. Gosh, I love that show. I'll have to rewatch it. It's been a little while. But I think about it all the time and quote it. And, your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. I still think that all the time. So please go watch it and tell us if you enjoyed it or if you already are a fan. We rarely meet earnest fans these days.
Yes. Or if you've serenaded anyone with a piano, important things.
I'd love to hear that too.
That's it for today's episode. If you are switching grade levels, keep our 4 tips in mind. And remember that you can adapt your favorite parts of teaching for any age of students. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Teacher Approved. I'm Heidi.
And I'm Emily. Thank you for listening. Be sure to follow or subscribe in your podcast apps so that you never miss an episode.
You can connect with us and other teachers in the Teacher Approved Facebook group. We'll see you here next week. Bye for now.
Bye.